All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials Are Old podcast. And you know what, Brian? We've been doing this podcast for almost 2 years now. And honestly, I have to say, this podcast is fucking horrible. This
It
podcast
makes
is
me
like
want to
shit.
shit.
Yeah, this podcast is shit coming out of my balls. I've had more fun snorting cow shit up my fucking nose. I'd rather choke down
It
a
makes me
hippo's
so
ball sack
angry.
while getting a
I
swordfish shoved up my ass. Honestly,
I want
this fucking
to
shit sucks.
stuck my balls inward so that they invert, so that I feel really pretty when I look at myself.
Exactly. This show fucking sucks. It's sucking fucks. It's a piece of shit. And I think you and I are both agreeing here. We don't like it. The show is awful. We've just wasted time. But you know what, Brian? I think we have one more movie we could review before we shut this shit down forever.
What are you thinking?
I was thinking, we reviewed a nostalgic piece of shit. Let's angrily review something that's actually significantly better. So this week we're going to be reviewing the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. But before we get into our review this week, Brian, let's bring back our segment, Cringe Generational Cringe Millennial Moment of the Week.
Week.
Woo! Yeah! All right. And even though this was our joint series, Brian, this is your week to present us the Cringe Generational Millennial segment. And you had a great idea for one that I unfortunately was just informed about when you told me about it.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about it till last night when I was watching the film again. I want to talk about the new Minecraft movie. Not so much the film itself, or even the trailer itself, which looks like it's basically kind of a Jumanji update. Jack Black looks like shit in it, and I say this as someone who was a Jack Black fan as a kid, but he looks like he's not even trying. He showed up in dirty clothes, unshaven, ungroomed. Doesn't really look like any sort of character that would be in a Minecraft world. Just looks like lazy Jack Black. But what is more interesting to me is how hollow this trailer looks. It looks like any sort of shitty kids movie. Like it looks like an Illumination movie. Or...
You know what it honestly looks like, Brian? It looks like it has the production values of a YouTuber movie.
Yeah, but the budget is huge. It looks like shit. Budget is huge. It's going to make so much money. And I thought that was really interesting because the explosion in popularity of Minecraft, which I would say old millennials are maybe just a little too old to have really hit the sweet spot on. Like I'd say we just missed that, right? As a phenomenon.
You know who loves Minecraft, though, is my very elderly millennial brother. He loves Minecraft, apparently.
There's a type of millennial who I guess people think it's soothing and calming. It's more an Animal Crossing guy. But I'm thinking the explosion in popularity of Minecraft, it's directly related to YouTube and to YouTube personalities. It's not just because it was such a fucking popular and concise and well-developed game, which like it is all those things if you're into it. It's because it was so adaptable to the like early online content creation format. It was so malleable to being an online personality. And it got me thinking. So when we were online, like we witnessed the evolution from posting to content creation, right? Those are like distinct eras that in retrospect we can look back at and we can see. One year you were posting, the other year you were making content. And we watched that. And part of the people that ushered that in were Doug Walker and James Rolfe, who we'll be talking about today. But just a couple years after that, you get this Minecraft streaming, and not even sure, early Let's Player economy, the face cam shit, which at the time I thought was a fad. I thought the types of content creators I liked were going to outlive them forever. And now
that's pretty much all they do now. Even the actual like non-face cam Let's Players are all face cam Let's Players now. Fucking DSP is still going strong fucking 15 years later, man, or whatever the fuck.
Good for him. Based. And
it's, he has survived. He survived so many of his detractors. It's actually really funny.
He's an OG. He's a fucking real one. But it's just funny that like, so when AVGN came out, and Nostalgia Critic, I would say, in my opinion, to a lesser extent, when I was watching AVGN, there wasn't really anything like that on YouTube. Not much like that online. There were some people on Something Awful that wrote reviews of bad video games and were funny, but AVGN was a very specific thing, right? It's on YouTube and it's got some production quality and it's a character, it's kind of skits. And so you were going to watch it, even if, in my opinion, the humor, like sometimes was funny and sometimes it was too scatological and I didn't always like the swearing, but there was nothing else like it. And it felt like you were in on it because he was playing games that you played as a kid and not everyone at your school necessarily knew about this shit. Fast forward about, what would you say, 15 years, 16 years? Where are we at now?
Well, AVGN has technically been doing this for about 20 years now. I watched AVGN for the first time, I want to say about 2007, early 2008. So I was in fairly early.
Yeah.
I remember watching it on fucking Screw Attack. That's how early it was.
As far as AVGN as a phenomenon, truly one of the first major online gaming and one of the first online content creators, but especially in gaming, let's say late 2007, early 2008. Fast forward to 2024, and now the fucking Minecraft game, which again has a direct connection to YouTube lore and to like early YouTube branding. It's this huge studio product. It's now on the level of like being something like a Marvel movie or like a soulless Disney movie that they've just crapped out. And you just think like, can we in some way, and I'm not blaming Doug or James or anyone, but you can look at this big shitty movie that's going to make so much money and probably more movies that come out after, and you can go, oh, I can track the lineage of this back to like these charming, kind of quirky online critics to some degree. I can trace the lineage back to that to people like Doug Walker and AVGN. And like, who would have thought? Because when I was watching AVGN, probably same time, 07, 08, it seemed like you were in an in-group, right? But you felt in on it, and you, especially if you liked retro games and you're like, oh, he's talking about this type of game that isn't a first-person shooter. And now it's just the landscape has changed so much. It's crazy that in some small way that may be because of him.
No, it really fucking has. And, speaking of, let's get into the details here of this movie. So, once again, this is the Angry Video Game Nerd movie. It came out in 2014, and the first trivia fact I had here is James actually considers it his 428th film, because if you go on Cinemassacre, he actually has a chronological order of every single film or, like, short film he's ever done, which is fucking awesome, actually. So,
yeah,
he considers this his 428th project. I'm sure he would have rather had it be his 420th. I'm just kidding. I don't know if James is a real toker or not. He doesn't strike me as one.
I don't really think he's ever done drugs.
Well, he drinks a lot. I mean,
he's playing so many shitty games. He's got to.
There was actually a very recent video where he literally fills a kiddie pool with rolling rock and just swims in it. Adorable.
Bit. We love him.
This movie is rated R. No surprise. There's a lot of swears in this movie. Of course, he's the fucking nerd. Of course, he's going to swear a lot. And this movie was written and directed by Kevin Finn and James Rolfe. Now, Kevin Finn was a guy I'd never heard of, but apparently he was high school friends with James Rolfe and actually worked with him very early on in AVGN. So, cool shit. It was produced by Sean Keegan, and Kevin Finn is most well known for this movie, and I put a bunch of shitty shorts, because that's all that was in IMDb, was like a bunch of, like, fucking... Who the fuck is that? Like, there's like this Indian American YouTuber who always makes these fake ass videos of like, this person did this, the result you'll never expect. I can't remember what the fuck that guy's name is.
Fuck, I know exactly. I know who you mean. And it's always like a morality play about like, oh, here's why you shouldn't bully people. Well, if you got bullied, I'm going to give you $1 million and make your bully eat shit.
Dhar Mann, that's it.
Dhar Mann. I almost said Darfur.
Yeah, Darfur. He's just, maybe you should go to Darfur as Dhar Mann. I'm sure he'll have a great time. Talking about James Rolfe, of course, he is the most amazing angry video game nerd, although he's obviously done some other things too. And that's the thing. James Rolfe considers this, AVGN in general, as a Cinemassacre project. He's not the angry video game nerd. His film company is Cinemassacre, and it's just part of his repertoire of talent. So whenever people are like, oh, you're AVGN, he apparently does not take too well to that.
He wants to be seen as a filmmaker. I remember him saying that a long time ago, being like, oh, I'm a film nerd. I'm not really a video game nerd. And my good friend, my best friend throughout middle school and high school, was so bummed out when he heard him say that. Because I was identifying with James, I think, just in a general nerdy way. But my school friend was like, oh, he's a fucking nerd and gamer like me. And I was like, well, I don't think he really plays video games like that. And my friend was so bummed out.
The movie's about 115 minutes long. It had a budget of about $325,972, and that was what was listed on Wikipedia. I feel like the budget was probably a little bit higher than that because he probably got some private funding, but the $325,972 was the amount that he raised on, I think it was either GoFundMe or Indiegogo. I can't remember. It was one of the two. Maybe Kickstarter. It was one of those. And the original stretch goal was $75,000, but it eventually went up to $325,000. Now, I do think personally, before we get into the synopsis of this movie, which we'll get into in a little bit, I personally wish it would have stayed 75,000 because I think the fans probably would have liked it a lot more. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I think James went a little too ambitious with this movie. I still like this movie, but I think he went a little too ambitious and he tried going the more traditional Hollywood route when he never was a traditional Hollywood guy. So I don't know why he did that. Kind of weird to me, to be honest.
I will have to agree with you. I think he felt an obligation to make the movie big for the fans. And I have to agree with you. He could have made it a small... And I don't know. I don't necessarily mean that I think he should have made Clerks like something that small, but just something a little more concise.
To be fair, if he did that, maybe it would end up like fucking Kick-Assia or Suburban Nights or one of those piles of shit. But although to be fair, though, James is an extremely competent filmmaker, so I think he would have been able to make it work because Doug is never been like film guy. He just made videos online. That's why all of his movies suck shit. Like that's why they're all so bad.
If anyone here watches, because people might not like this movie, I could see that. I don't necessarily think that, I enjoyed this movie, but I get how it's not like a great film. But if you see this and you go, oh, this James Rolfe guy, he sucks, he can't make movies, I would implore you to watch his short film, The Deader the Better, or his Mr. Bucket Forge James episode.
Ooh, that's another
which
great
is
one.
A great piece of horror comedy, straight up.
Yeah, actually, all of James's horror episodes are like fantastic. They're all great short films. Yeah. The Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre reviews. Of course, you mentioned Mr. Bucket. He actually his most recent AVGN review is like a fucking film noir parody. And it's like black and white, and he does like the film noir thing. It's wild.
I haven't watched a new video by James in something like probably since we lived together, Taylor, to be honest.
To be honest with you, I've actually been watching a lot of his old videos and a couple more recent videos.
Yeah, me too. When we talked about doing this, I revisited some old ones.
No, totally. And I'm not going to mention a certain subreddit, but a certain kind of loser on the internet hates these new videos. And to be honest with you, they're fine. They're perfectly fine. Some of them are even really good, but they're not like fucking awful. So I don't understand why people are so pissed off about Modern James. That makes no sense to me.
So I know we said, and I agree with each other, we don't want to talk very much about these because they are fucking losers. It's never going to be 2008 again. You're never going to be in college again. You're never going to be in high school again. James could go back to making the exact same types of films he made when you first saw him. You are not who you were then. That's not his fault.
He's still going to be a dad who has a receding hairline and a wife and a house, and you're going to be a fucking loser who lives in his mom's basement. And I try not to say that kind of insult for the most part because I think it's stupid and not true, but I think these people genuinely live in their mom's basement. I'm going to be honest.
It's okay. It is like, so I read a good amount of the subreddit just to see, you know what it's like? It's weird, like hateful gamer bullshit. It's like the way that like some gamers hate like women. But it's directed at just a guy who made videos that you say you love. Now his videos aren't as good. And like I said, I don't watch his new content. Like, I'm not like so connected to defending him, but it's like, just watch something else, man. Just watch something else.
No, couldn't fucking agree more. Go watch, I don't know, oh my god, like Sticks and Hammer or fucking that right-wing guy who lives like a half an hour away from me that told people to delete child porn off the computers before they, that guy, before they bring it into the PC repair shop. Like, talk to that guy. Talk to the fucking child porn guy who pisses himself, That's more up your alley than, like, fucking seriously.
Anything, but like, why be so mad about what seems like by all accounts a nice guy with a family? Like, okay, so I stopped watching James's content pretty much around the time this movie came out. It was about to come out. I remember Taylor and I, we were living together when it was getting really close to come out. We were both excited about it, and I actually never saw it, but I was kind of like, okay, he did the movie, and I kind of drifted away from it, drifted to other things. And I think I saw the writing on the wall that his content was changing, and I just was like, okay, maybe, I dipped. But I don't think I was ever mad about it.
And you know what? People always talk about, oh, he raised all this money to make a fucking movie that nobody liked or whatever, which isn't true in the first place that nobody liked it. But also on top of it, he's one of the few, like, fucking crowdfund people who actually delivered on the product they fucking put out there. And it looks like it cost $325,000 on top of it. Like, he put every fucking dollar in this movie.
Every dollar on screen. You can see every dollar.
Oh, and then speaking of, so just real quick, it has a 59% audience score, and it, of course, doesn't have any critic scores because this was not released in a wide format. I think it had a very, very small release. I think I was reading at one point, it was like maybe like a dozen theaters or something. I think one of them was in Chicago and like one in Philadelphia, of course, in Los Angeles or whatever, but it had a very, very small theatrical release. But it does have a DVD and Blu-ray release, and apparently the Blu-ray release has like a dozen hours of fucking bonus content on it, which is awesome.
Yeah, that rules.
He's one of the last people to fucking do that shit. And then I think it's time to get into the synopsis here because the synopsis is fairly long. I'm not going to go over every bit of it, but I do want to go over the synopsis here, of course, as we always do. So the movie begins in a flashback in 1983. 2 million copies of the quote-unquote worst video game of all time, E.T. for the Atari 2600, are dumped into a landfill outside of Alamogordo, New Mexico. And I loved this one, by the way, because there was a trivia fact, because I knew they had actually found the dump site recently, but apparently they found the dump site and actually made a documentary about it 3 months before this movie came out.
Oh, see, that lines up perfectly.
But it's like, oh, this thing that doesn't exist, and they eventually find it, and it's like, yeah, 3 months earlier they found it. But no, that was a thing in like video game folklore forever. Like I remember them talking about it on like G4 back when I was like a fucking grade schooler or something. And then they eventually did find it. Although I was reading up on it, apparently they did not find the 2 million cartridges. They only found about 1,000 cartridges.
Well, and it wasn't. I don't think it was just ET. It was a lot of games.
It was, yeah. It was a lot of games. It was the Atari 2600 Pac-Man. It was E.T. It was a bunch of other garbage that they just couldn't sell. And by the way, the old game industry was crazy. They made more copies of Atari Pac-Man than Atari 2600s existed. That's how bad they were at this shit. Because they literally thought that people would buy an Atari 2600 just to play Pac-Man at home, but they made a shitty Pac-Man port.
Yeah, it can suck. You can already play it for a quarter.
Exactly. In the present day, game executive Mandy, played by Sarah Glendenning of Cockburn Industries, and trust me, there's a lot of those eye-rolly names in this fucking movie, proposes to her bosses creating an intentionally bad sequel, ET2. Thanks to the popularity and success of the AVGN, sales of poorly made video games have increased dramatically, and a review of ET2 by the nerd would drive his fans to buy the game. Now, here's my first major issue with this movie, right? I don't think the angle that AVGN is actually famous, I don't think that really works, I'm going to be honest with you.
I think I'm more open to it than you are, only because I kind of agree with you. It's kind of weird. Like, it's kind of awkward because they make him really famous. I guess I'm curious what your alternative would be. Is it that he's moderately, like he's kind of like he's an internet cult figure like he is in real life? Is that kind of what you do?
Yeah, I would have made him an internet cult figure, or maybe just a guy who thinks he's fucking cool and whatever, and then he goes out in the real world and like, oh my god, who's this guy that smells like beer and piss and complains about video games all the time? Although that might have been a little too cynical. But I thought that would have been better.
That would have been good. I think for James, that would have been too cynical. Yeah, it's only awkward because part of the charm of AVGN, especially at this time, was that you were part of the club by liking it. He wasn't like, I don't know, Michael Jackson, right?
No, fucking totally. But yeah, I would have rather him, been like a minor cult figure or like just somebody who thinks he's hot shit and everybody hates him. Because like in the early reviews, the only people that interact with him are people who hate him and like cartoon characters who like beat him up all the time.
Yeah, he's an asshole. He's an asshole nerd. So this is, I think, as good a place as any. I think that's a good observation. I don't hate him being famous angle, but I don't know if it added anything. I could add almost the same movie by making him a more realistic, internet kind of cult figure, like you'd said. The first thing I noticed watching this, and it's going to become really apparent immediately, we've got like an evil corporation setting us up, introducing us to our hapless kind of, not blue collar, but, salt of the earth, telling like his hero. This is an SNL character movie.
Yep. Actually, it really reminded me, I mean, obviously I have a lot of SNL character movies, but it really reminded me of Wayne's World a lot.
Yeah, reminds me very much of Wayne's World. An SNL character movie in general. Yeah, but like Ladies Man, Wayne's World, this guy who's kind of big, he has some great divine gift that like just, parents or authority teachers or corporations, they can't understand it. Man, like the people understand him, and they take to him.
No, it's fucking awesome. I'll just say that. Like, I do like his take on the SNL movie or like the fucking 80s, 90s, like adventure comedy or whatever. Like, I genuinely do really like a lot of that. But like I said, I wish they would have made him just not famous or not super famous at the very, very moment. Like, he is a worldwide name. This company literally makes a shitty game on purpose so that Nerd will talk about it and it sells like 5 trillion copies. Little goofy, I'm going to be honest with you.
Maybe he wanted to do the evil businessman angle. And for that to make sense, for a corporation to invest in that, I guess maybe you need the nerd to be really famous. I don't know.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I don't want to nitpick it too much, but I personally think it's just a little bit too much of a suspension of disbelief. Just a little bit. Not awful. It doesn't take me out of the movie. But anyway, so the fucking nerd, played by James Rolfe, and his sidekick Cooper, played by Jeremy Suarez, are working on a video game review. The nerd has become disheartened over the years as his fans continue to buy and play the games he reviews and warns people to stay away from. On top of this, because the nerd must promote...
trying to save them. He has a mission. He's trying to help people. He's not just this guy yelling online. You don't understand. He cares about you, and he cares about honesty, and he hates these shitty games that lied to you.
That is actually the thing I really love about, especially the really early nerd reviews. Because, he's like warning, like pleading from the rafters about games that nobody cares about anymore.
Games that are 25 years old. It's awesome.
It's like, you never play this shitty game! And it's like a game I can find for 50 cents that nobody remembers.
Stay away from it! Destroy it!
It's so awesome, actually. It's really funny. Yeah. And by the way, even though the Nostalgia Critic does the exact same thing, but AVGN does it a million times better. I'm just going to be honest with you.
So AVGN is extremely elderly millennial coded, and it is cringe as hell. But oh my god, it's pretty fucking charming.
Like I said, I've been watching a lot of his older videos. I actually got through season 1 and 2 last night. I watched them back to back. It's like
Nice.
5 hours of content. And honestly, I was laughing at a lot of the early ones, especially when he goes on his really verbose rants. They still make me laugh. I'm going to be honest with you.
He was good at those. I actually think, as a critic, I think James could be pretty insightful even when he was in character. At least on an observational level, I think he had good things to say about games.
No, 100%. Like, it's, and I don't want to keep comparing him to his rival, quote unquote rival, because I mean, they did have a quote unquote feud at one point. But God, his complaints were so much more substantive than Doug's. Like, it's crazy how much more substantive they were.
The
like,
other difference, because the nerd definitely would nitpick to make a joke, but at least he was trying to be funny. He was making a joke. I always feel like for James Rolfe, you seeing him as a critic was far secondary to him playing an entertaining character. Whereas I think for him, it's more important for you to see him as a serious film critic or a type of film critic than a funny character.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, but yeah, well, we want to be clear, even though I grew up with both Nostalgia Critic and Doug, and I've watched both of their old content recently, Doug's is so much worse. In every single way, it is significantly worse. Worse production value, worse points, more annoying. It's just crazy. So, eventually, the nerd discovers marketing for E.T. 2. His fans encourage him to review the original E.T., something he has stood against for years because the game scarred him as a child. And the next trivia fact I had here is, apparently, James, as a child, actually did watch the E.T. movie, and it did give him nightmares for years. So there's actually some truth to that.
And I told you this, Taylor. I don't accept that the nerd's origin story is from playing the E.T. game.
No,
it's from Castlevania 2. We all know
Castlevania 2 and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Those are the origin games.
That's right. Yeah. And that makes sense because the nerd loves horror. So those would be two games he would have been drawn to as a little kid, probably before E.T.
Oh, and also technically Karate Kid, the video game. It was actually a 3-part series. Apparently James was going to stop after the Karate Kid one.
Yeah, he just put them on a VHS tape, right? They were kind of like student films. He just, right? Those.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
No, it's just E.T. is not the origin game for the nerd. I don't accept it. It's Jekyll and Hyde and Castlevania 2.
After some personal thought, the nerd decides to go to Alamogordo to debunk the conspiracy theory surrounding the buried cartridges, promising to review the game if the theory proves to be true. He is accompanied by Cooper and Mandy, and the trip is completely funded by Cockburn Industries. While filming their expedition, Cooper reveals that he believes in a super being known as Death, and I'm not going to say the name because I can't say it, so I'm going to call him Death Marxist, who has the power to destroy all existence. Sergeant McButter, played by Helena Barrett, and the legless General Dark Onward, played by Stephen Mendel, thinking the trio are looking for... Yeah, I know, right? And honestly, I was wondering, like, what is the pun there? But do you think it's that?
I don't think so. Maybe Mike.
I don't think so either.
No, I'm not going to harp on it too much because it's a silly movie and it's in good spirits. Mandy, not a great female character to me.
So there is a bit of trivia that is conjecture, but the unnamed fans on the unnamed Reddit who hate James did find a blog post apparently from James's wife, April, where she complained that AVGN did not have enough diversity in it. Well, and so they have a theory that James put these characters in here for diversity reasons. Now, I don't think it's true, but she did have a blog post complaining about that. And then a couple years later, there are these, I'll be honest, token characters in this movie. Like, that's what they are. They really don't have a reason to exist. I'm going to be honest with you. It could have been Mike, could have been Kyle, it could have been Bootsy, it could have been anybody who was already established.
Would have made more sense. Well, the thing with the Mandy character, our token girl character, and again, I don't think James is not, to me, I don't think he's a hateful guy. I don't think this is a hateful movie. And if this had been made in the early 90s or even mid 90s or late 90s, probably wouldn't even be saying anything about it. So my thing with Mandy is there's this running joke that we're supposed to be really impressed that she likes video games. We're like, oh, she's not just, what's the thing that James says? Nerds before birds. That's his,
yeah, he says that. And he also, I think Cooper at one point says something like, oh, she's not a girl, she's a gamer. And then eventually they say, she's not a gamer, she's a girl. It's like,
yeah, and it's like, okay, all right. Like, I feel like by 2014, this discourse was very played out.
So, in my opinion, though, I do think it's a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, though. I do think it's a bit more of, like, a parody of, like, 90s and 80s sexism in, like, fucking action movies and, like, nerd shit. I think it's a little bit more self-aware than that. I'm going to be honest. I don't know that, but I think it's a bit more self-aware.
I think that we're on the same page. I think it's a little self-aware, but not completely.
No, not completely, no. So yeah, when that happened, I'm like, wait, when did fucking Gamergate happen? And Gamergate happened like a couple months after this.
Gamergate happened because of this movie. People were so mad that this girl was in this movie.
No, in all honesty, there probably is like a couple weirdos. In fact, literally, Brian, Gamergate started a month after this movie came out.
Some guy was like, that guy that dated Zoe said, like, I saw that girl in AVGN and Mike wasn't in it, and I knew that some slit took Mike Matei's part away. I was so mad.
Oh my God. And once again, no bullshit. This is the last time I'll talk about those fucking losers on Reddit. There was one post I saw today where they legitimately said, who is the least hated person on Cinemassacre? And they're like, well, except for Mike. Everybody loves Mike.
No.
Unironically. And I'm like, nobody likes Mike. Nobody likes Mike.
That's a joke. The racist psychopath sex pervert.
No, honestly though, Brian, on that subreddit, they love Mike. They talk about how much they love Michael, and it's not ironic at all. I don't know.
His content sucked. He was annoying. He wasn't funny. He always talked about fucking and tried to use his AVGN cloud to meet women on the internet and posted.
He literally posted a dick pic. Yes.
Also, by the way,
what's actually really funny is that there is a poster apparently for 10-inch Tails, which is of course a 9-inch Nails reference, and on IMDb they said this is allegedly in reference to Mike's penis size.
Yeah, I was so glad that Mike was not in this movie. Should we?
No, he is in this movie. I mean, he has a cameo, but he's in this movie.
He has a brief cameo, but I was so glad that he wasn't a main character.
Me too.
So glad that he wasn't a main character. Should we do a run through of motherfucker Mike?
Yeah, so let's go to real quick. I'll start. So James and Mike were I think they were childhood friends, right? Or they met in college.
That's childhood friends is the only way you're friends with a guy like that.
That's true. So, but anyways, he was very, very important in early AVGN. He was responsible for managing the early social media. He managed the YouTube channel. He was an actor in a lot of the early videos. He was Bugs Bunny in the Bugs Bunny, the whatever that one was. I can't remember at the moment. He was just various characters in various episodes. Honestly, some of my favorite episodes of AVGN. So I can't hate on that. But especially around when this movie came out and a little bit earlier and a little bit after, he started posting solo content because James was busy making the movie and he didn't have time to make content for the channel. And he made the worst shit, sub-channel awesome crap garbage on the channel and posted it unironically, thinking he was fucking great. Oh my God. And like I said, the people on that shitty subreddit, they unironically love Mike. And I'm like, why? He's the most hateable person on that channel by a lot.
So bad content, annoying guy.
Giant racist sex pervert.
You made incredibly racist comic books. How were they called? The Lazy Bandito or the Gringo Bandito?
Oh yeah,
where it was just
horrible.
This character that just said all these slurs and just a lot of scatological humor and jokeless racial stereotypes, really harmful, hateful ones. And he always posted using the official Cinemassacre account about his sex life or about jerking off. Just a very strange and unpleasant guy.
And yeah, I'm totally happy that he's been basically banned from Cinemassacre. Honestly, he should join Channel Awesome.
He's gonna show up on Channel Awesome, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. But yeah, so thankfully he's not in the movie. But continuing on with the plot here. So the nerd Cooper and Mandy search for the creator of E.T., Howard Scott Warshaw, for answers. They instead stumble across the home of Dr. Xandor, played by the actor Time Winters, who tells them that the E.T.'s level design is an exact map of Area 51. Dr. Xandor gave the code to Warshaw to help meet the 5-week deadline Atari set for E.T.'s completion, which is actually true. They expected this guy to make a game in 5 weeks, which was going to be released around the Christmas holiday season, about one of the highest grossing movies of all time. That's how cocky early video games were. Talk about crunch time. Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, why did
no
that guy
wonder the industry fucking
that?
crashed.
Yeah,
interesting enough, Howard Scott Warshaw in real life is a therapist now, which is awesome to me.
God bless him. E.T. game being a blueprint for Area 51, that's a cute little plot device. I thought that was pretty clever.
No, I did too. And to exact revenge on the government for kidnapping and holding hostage an alien he was attempting to free. The government ordered the burial of the cartridges while Xandor escaped with the metallic material Area 51 was researching at the time in an attempt to reassemble the alien spaceship, replacing it with tinfoil. Mandy is captured by the female lady, I can't remember her name at the moment, while wandering outside of the house. The nerd and Cooper believe she is a double agent and do not go after her. So a lot happened. Not a whole lot of relevant things. There's this really, honestly, cringy fake sex scene that I was like, oh my God, why did James do this? Maybe that was April's idea. Is she a cuck queen or something? No, I'm not going to get into that. I have no idea. But that was very, very weird. I'm going to be honest. And I'm like, James, I know you're probably calling back to that gag in fucking Austin Powers or something, but that's not the nerd. The nerd is asexual, in my opinion. I think he's the most asexual character of all time.
Yeah, the nerd is incredibly asexual.
If there was like a hot naked woman in front of him, he'd be like, fuck this, I need to play TMNT 4. That's what he would
Where's the fucking clit? It's so hard to find. Does it even exist?
No, Brian, that's DSP, okay? This is bullshit. Where's the clit? God. He does the otter laugh. I can't even do the otter laugh that he does. He's like trying to eat her pussy, and he's just like, oh, I need air. Oh God, we hate you, DSP, by the way. Although, once again, though, DSP, he has survived almost all of his haters. It's hilarious how many haters have like been canceled or quit, and he's still going.
The best part of DSP's whole deal is that he has legitimate fans who do really nice things for him, and he talks shit about him. He had a shitty computer, and a fan of his built him a computer, like a whole gas gaming rig, and then he couldn't get it to work, and then he called his fan out. This fan who was nice enough to build him a gaming rig for free said, like, oh, you built me a fucking lemon, you dumbass. What the fuck, you build me a computer that doesn't work?
Also, one more thing I gotta add to this. This broken clit mechanics. There we go, I got it.
It's fucking broken.
By the way, though, Brian, DSP is married, which should be very depressing. If DSP can find somebody, anybody.
This is his second marriage, I think.
No, he's only been married once.
I'm thinking of Wings.
Yeah, DSP only dated Panda Lee. They never got married, which makes sense because DSP was 30 and they met each other when she was 18 and he was 30. So, of course, he was never going to marry her.
He needs to shave his fucking face.
Nah,
I think he'd be a good-looking guy. You think the goatee's doing him some favors? You think it's doing some heavy lifting for him?
I've seen some old footage of him in his fighting game days, and he looks a lot better with the facial hair. I'm just going to be honest with you. And then going back to the plot here, going back to the Alamogordo site, the Nerd and Cooper discover a large crowd of fans, and the head of Cockburn Industries promoting the release of ET2 with the premise of digging out a copy of the original ET game from the site. And another trivia fact I had here is this is also the scene where Mike Matei and Kyle show up for their very thankfully brief cameo. Not Kyle, he's fine. But Mike, obviously, we don't want him in the movie. But they apparently filmed this in front of a green screen back in Philly because they refused to travel for this movie, which that's fine. They don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, well, like, and Kyle's just like, you know, he's beloved. He wrote the AVGN theme song, which is basically like, you know, a Weezery Green Day-esque power pop song. Just a nice guy. He does construction now. No reason he should be expected to travel for this. It's good to see him. Motherfucker Mike is a motherfucker. We hate you, Mike. Suck my fucking dick. You're an asshole. And you almost ruined James' career.
Wait, are you Mr. Bucket? You wanted to suck his dick and balls?
Your balls pop out of my balls.
Yeah. The nerd tells his fans there are no carcasses buried there, but Scott Warshaw himself appears and tells fans the opposite, which I also love that cameo, by the way, because I actually didn't expect him to show up in this movie for whatever reason, because like he's busy, I don't know, talking to a woman whose kid died and talking about their trauma and stuff, and he's like, let's go to this random movie. It's shot in the middle of the desert.
I mean, there's some great cameos in here, actually. I mean, Lloyd Kaufman also shows up later on.
Yeah, and also the Nostalgia Critic shows up, our favorite person. Is this the only thing that could possibly have Lloyd Kaufman and fucking Nostalgia Critic in the same movie?
Yeah, because one of those guys is a genius, and one of them is Lloyd Kaufman. Also, Taylor, don't forget, Pat the NES Punk.
Yes, he is here.
The guy's so punk rock that his theme song was Bad Reputation by Joan Jett. Don't mess with him.
Yeah, and also Keith Apothecary was in this movie. Doesn't everybody remember Keith Apothecary?
Yeah, Taylor.
I also saw him in this movie, and I'm like, oh god, yeah, that guy fucking exists. I totally forgot. He's the guy that runs up to the fence and like electrocutes himself to death. He was like just some bad content creator. The only reason I know him is because he was on the AVGN roast, because there was a roast of the AVGN at one point where there was an entire set list that was completely plagiarized from fucking Jeff Ross.
If you're gonna steal from the best.
I guess, yeah.
Patrice and Greg Giraldo on.
Yeah, they should have had fucking Justin Silverman be.
Patrice comes up like, this motherfucker's such a nerd.
Annoyed, the nerd breaks into Area 51 disguised as an alien. He is captured. Oh, I also love this one, by the way. Actually, I love the scene where he gets captured and he escapes, and there's the retinal scanner, but he misreads it. It's actually rectal scanner. I don't know why that one really. That's like a classic 80s gag.
And to the listeners, if you're thinking that this movie has become maybe a little bit unwieldy, maybe there's a lot going on and it's rushing through sort of a pretty involved plot that has lots of moving from point to point, you would be correct. It's a good time to point out. So James really wanted to make this. He wanted to make a real film, a big film, and he's a talented filmmaker. There's plenty of evidence of that. I think that this film becomes, I think unwieldy is the best word for it. He was trying very hard to make it a real movie, an adventure, like a movie that he would have grown up with, and it can become a little disorienting.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's honestly a lot of stuff that works really well. There's stuff that doesn't. There's just too much crammed in here, obviously, for the kind of movie it was, for the budget it was. Just too much.
I was thinking, watching this last night, he maybe could have picked one big, maybe go with, is it a chase movie? Is it like an alien escape movie? Is it like a video game based kind? Maybe picked one solid premise, one of any of those things, you know?
But there's like 5 premises in this, probably more to be honest with you. There's like 5 or 6 premises in this movie.
I enjoy this movie, but it's because of the age I am and the way that I grew up and, liking James. Like, I really liked James when I discovered him because, I had a parasocial relationship to him. He was, a guy that made sense to me. And I like seeing him. I think the movie's got some really funny gigs. I think it's very charming. It's very cute, but there's a lot going on. So it's not just that we are like rushing through this plot. It's insane. It moves at an insane clip and it's still 2 hours long.
Yeah. But yeah, so eventually, talk about all this stuff that happens. I'm just going to power through this. So, General Onward captures James, makes him play E.T. Eventually, he launches a missile at Mount Fuji, the basis for the Atari logo. And while leaving the room, gets his left arm cut off, which that's also actually a really funny gag because this general just keeps getting fucked up all the time.
Yeah, I'm just getting annihilated. Kind of makes me think of like a Mel Brooks character or something.
Well, they even make the joke about a flesh wound, so clearly there's a reference there.
Yeah, he makes several great quotes throughout the movie, which is nice, but it's kind of, I'm going to be honest, it's one thing for him to do that in an AVGN review, but in what's supposed to be his big breakout film, it's like, well, why are you quoting other movies? You're like, man... I think it's
that's the elderly millennial fucking internet content creator thing, though. It's references.
Does it make you feel a little bit like he does just the Flesh Wound thing? He does Army of Darkness. He does Ghostbusters. And I kind of thought like this was supposed to be his big pivot away from just being a YouTuber. It really was. And you think like, oh, that kind of encapsulates this. Is maybe he couldn't quite think of his own one-liners. He decided he'd rather just quote movies he loved, himself.
No, 100%.
It made me a little sad.
A little bit too, but at the end of the day, James is still a happy father and husband, so I think he's doing fine. But I think he wanted this movie to be a little different. I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, well, I think that's what I want to kind of wrap. I have thoughts about that for sure.
No, for sure. During the launch countdown, an alien resembling the one in E.T., voiced by Robbie Rist, grabs the nerd and pulls him to safety. And next trivia fact I had here is Robbie Rist, who actually is like a pretty famous voice actor. He was a child actor back in like the fucking 70s. His first role ever was on the Brady Bunch. But anyways, he did a lot of stuff. He voiced Michelangelo in the TMNT live action movies in the like 80s and 90s. And apparently he was a really big fan of James's TMNT 3 review. And he called James and was like, hey, if you're ever making anything, I want to be in it, basically.
Hang on, I have an AVGN joke.
Oh,
Robbie Rist? What the kind of fucking name is that? That sounds like a nickname that I'd make for jerking my dick off. Like, hey, I'm going to go have a Robbie Rist.
Yeah. Eventually, the missile hits Mount Fuji, releases Death Marxist, as I'm gonna keep calling him, who is trapped inside the mountain. Meanwhile, Mandy keeps the lady away from the nerd and Cooper's location, eventually leading them to a confrontation on the Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas. Once again, so much shit happens in this movie. I'm really just powering through it here. The nerd and alien escape in a fighter jet similar to the one in NES Top Gun video game. Now, once again, this is a movie that you're right. James wanted to like shift away from AVGN to like being a mainstream filmmaker, but he's making this an AVGN movie, and it is a specifically AVGN movie.
Here's the thing. This, for me, there's a reason I think in retrospect that after this movie came out, I was kind of done with the character. I think to James, this was supposed to be the culmination of the series and the character. And it's like, why do you keep coming back to the niche kind of stuff? And I know it's because he loves his fans. He wants to do right by the fans, but it's just, he's kind of trying to have his cake and eat it too, I think.
No, absolutely. And I definitely have some thoughts when we get to our final thoughts about that. But yeah, there's just way too many fucking references in this movie to both AVGN content and just general pop culture stuff that doesn't need to be in your big breakout movie. I'm going to be honest with you. It's just,
and it's, but again, that's the elderly millennial thing, and references had done really well for him on YouTube, but he didn't want to stray too far, I'm sure, from the formula that had, helped him so much, I get it.
No, absolutely. Cooper is then captured by Death Marxist and brought to Las Vegas, where Mandy knocks female lady off the Eiffel Tower to her death. And this is also another reference. So when she falls off the thing, she just disappears. That's in clear reference to the TMNT 3 ending. I know that for a fact. I saw that. It took me a second. I'm like, oh, that's TMNT 3 ending reference. That's how much of a fucking nerd I am that I can remember the ending to a movie that nobody remembers that James hates or AVGN hates.
A lot of people are down on that movie, but that was my favorite one as a kid. It's not now, but it was when I was a kid. I thought it was so cool because they go back in time.
That's very fair.
It's not now.
Not now, but it was when you were a kid.
Yes.
Mandy is also captured by Death Marxist. The nerd and alien crash land at the Alamogordo site where a captured Dr. Xandor shouts to them that he hid the alien spaceship's metal inside the millions of ET game cartridges. Alien summons every single copy of the game to form the spaceship. This is just so much stuff. The nerd and the alien leave for Las Vegas to stop Death Marxist. The limbless General Onward is killed when attempting to stop them. And the final act of the movie here, the nerd fires a laser at Death Marxist satellite dish with the laser bouncing around inside of it before being shot into space, where it seemingly comes across many mysteries of the universe. I love how this person who came up with this is getting real existential about this. This is fucking awesome. But eventually they defeat him. Yeah, there's definitely some monkey cheese humor in this movie. We were talking about it a little earlier. There's actually a poster that says monkey cheese in the movie, but I don't think James was specifically mentioning that or referencing that. But that's really funny. But anyways, he's defeated. Afterwards, they return to the Alamogordo site and reunite with Dr. Xandor and the Nerds fans. Cooper and Mandy share a kiss. Once again, we needed to have that because that's the ending to all those 80s and 90s fucking movies. And then the nerd reviews E.T. 2. And then in the end credits, he actually reviews the original E.T. as well, which the fans have always wanted. And I do remember actually in the crowdfund, the thing was like, I'm going to make an AVGN movie where I'm finally going to review E.T. So that was like part of the pitch, was he was finally going to review E.T. for the movie.
Do you feel like he shouldn't have told people that? Do you feel like he should have kept that a secret?
I actually don't think that would have made much of a difference in whether fans liked the movie or not, to be honest with you. I think the reason a lot of fans don't like this movie, and even I'm not even talking about, once again, the people who shall not be named, but just general fans who may or may not like this movie, I think just a lot of it is, once again, even though this is an angry video game nerd movie, and James is in it, and he did make it and write it, but this doesn't really feel like an AVGN product or AVGN thing. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not. It doesn't seem like it's in the world of AVGN.
I sort of agree with you. I think this movie, and okay, so I'm going to get this out of the way. I enjoy this movie. I like James Rolfe very much. Just as a person, I enjoy watching him. My favorite videos he's ever done are usually not the nerd videos. They're videos where he plays himself, because he can be very insightful, very fun to listen to talk about film. Loved his Monster Madness series. He's done a lot of short documentary films that you'll find on his various YouTube accounts that are very good. I love the Board Games thing. I love his short film, The Dead of the Bay. I like the guy. I'm going to say something, Taylor, and you might feel free to push back on this. I don't know if I think this is a good movie. I enjoy it. I think there's a lot of good ideas in it. I think it's very fun. I don't know if it comes together. It's too long. There's too much going on, and it exists in this strange, uncanny valley. So my belief, I think there's a lot of evidence to back this up, is that James wanted this to be his big film breakthrough, and he wanted to pivot away from being a YouTuber into being a filmmaker. But at the same time, he tries to make this a really big, full, epic film. He tries to emulate all these kind of 80s and 90s comedy adventure films of his youth, which is a vibe I am very into. Love my Wayne's World. I love my Austin Powers. I love that shit. So I'm right here for this. At the same time, he's using this same character, and he's trying to fit in all the tropes of this character, who is very popular for YouTube, but was never going to be like, the nerd was never going to be America's sweetheart, you know?
No, he's too unpleasant. He's
humor.
Too verbose. He's honestly not a relatable character to the vast majority of people, but that's why people in the know love him. But no, I'm going to piggyback off of basically everything you said here. I think this movie's almost good. It just needs to be a little bit shorter, a little bit more concise, maybe a few too less references, if that makes sense. I think if this movie was, and I think you mentioned, a solid 90 to 100 minutes with the ET review at the end, I think this would have been a good movie. But the fact this movie is nearly 2 hours long, it's functionally 2 hours long. I just can't abide by that. I'm sorry. I just can't. It's way too fucking long for this kind of movie. 100%.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Solid 90 minutes. One of my positive thoughts while watching this is that I had memories of weird comedy films that my mom would show me when I was a little kid. Movies that she liked, that you could show a kid and you could enjoy together, that would kind of break up, the time you're having. So we would watch things like the infamously bad movie Clifford, which we loved in my house. Or like movies like Drop Dead Fred. And I thought like, oh, if I had a kid and I was sick of watching the same 4 Disney movies, and I was thinking, what's a funny, weird movie that a kid would like that, I wouldn't mind watching with them, that would be a little bit different. I might put this movie on. The way that my mom 100%. Put on Clifford or Drop Dead Fred to kind of break up the monotony of kid-friendly things that I was watching.
I like that. Honestly, Drop Dead Fred is a movie that I remember I first heard about because your favorite person, Nostalgia Critic, reviewed it, and he still thinks it's like one of his most hated movies he's reviewed for the show. It didn't look that bad. Like, not much worse than any other, like, kid-friendly thing or, like, overly sentimental or, like, gross thing, because the movie looks a little gross. Not like gross, like, bad, but there's, like, gross out humor in it a little bit.
Clifford and Drop Dead Fred both have the same problem to a lot of critics' eyes, which is that they're kind of like weirdly dark, kid-friendly comedies. Another movie, a hated movie that was beloved in my household, that my mom would put on for me the way I might put this on for my kids, was Clifford. Do you know about Clifford?
So I think I've heard about this movie.
Martin Short plays a little boy who is just a kind of like a manipulative psychopath who's staying with his uncle, and he ruins his uncle's life. It's like a dark comedy kids movie. And it's just a weird movie that my mom liked, that she'd show me because it was like a movie that she liked that was different if she needed a break from
Brian,
or whatever.
I think the reason you liked it, Brian, is that Shifty Shellshock was in it as a child actor.
Was he really?
Yeah, not a child actor. He would have been 20 when the movie came out. But yeah, Shifty Shellshock was in that movie as a bit actor.
I didn't know that, but I like that now. Anyways, but I would if I had a kid, I would put this movie on for them. It's like, oh, here's a kind of a fun movie that I liked. You know what I mean? The way my mom put those movies on for me.
Yeah, no, totally. And before we get to our final thoughts and pluggables, Brian, I do have a couple Amazon reviews I wanted to highlight here. So some funny ones, not awful ones. Once again, not going to put reviews from people who shall not be named, but except for one of them is kind of like that, but I'm not sure if they're quite that person. But our first review here is from Gabe. So Brian, I'm glad your friend decided to put his review in here. So
I've been trying to get him on the show.
Well, now he's on the show because I'm highlighting his review, but he gave this movie 5 stars. And the head of the review says, great movie. And the body of the review says, great Indian movie and faithful to any AVGN fan. Now, I don't know about you, Brian. I didn't see any like giant like dance and singing sequences and like bright floral like clothing and stuff. I don't remember this being very Indian. Did you, Brian?
Was that a typo?
I think they meant indie, like independent, but they put Indian. Yeah, awesome. And I'm like, man, we did not watch the same. Maybe there's a Bollywood remake of this movie. Maybe that's what he's talking about.
And it's still a half hour shorter than this one.
Even with like 15 dance sequences in it.
Yeah. It doesn't miss any of the plot points.
Yeah. And then speaking of people who definitely miss some plot points, so next review here is from just a bunch of letters and numbers I'm not going to repeat here because it's like 15 trillion of them. And they gave it 2 stars. And the head of the review says, the nerd video short reviews to long drawn out PC Indian film doesn't work. And the body of the review says, the nerd should stick to what he is famous and known for. Short video reviews. This has little to do with those except is an extended aspect on the character. I actually do kind of agree with that. Mediocre writing and typical indie-based actors drawn out in a long ordeal. I've seen this before, has a fan base, before someone has a fan base for one thing and overextended to another. This film was fan-funded, so guess for James was worth making. I think this person's mentally challenged because there's a lot of typos in here I'm trying to work through. But between the political correctness factor, which is very obvious, and the 5-year-old writing style, ET2, this is not worth a BD release or buying. Now, okay, so a couple points here. So the PC thing, that may or may not be true. I tend not to think that's true because James haters are psychos, and I think they made a lot of that shit up.
That's what I'm inclined to think.
Just because James's wife said something doesn't mean he's going to do it, okay? Let's be clear here. Even though she's been involved with James even before AVGN. It's not like she has like fucking veto power about what he does with those fucking creative projects, whatever. But also the ET2 thing with the 5-year-old writing style, he did that because he couldn't license ET. That's why there's no actual game footage in this movie.
It's a tongue-in-cheek way to do ET.
That's why he could get away with it in his YouTube videos. And in fact, if you watch the ET review on YouTube, it actually has ET game footage in it. But I think because this was a commercially released, like, fucking MPAA movie, he couldn't get away with that without having to pay licensing fees. So that's why it's like that. So you're getting mad at something that James had to do so he didn't get fucking sued. Like, fuck you,
A very
dude.
Sensible thing that he approached in a very tongue-in-cheek way. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's ET. Like, it's very cute.
Yeah, no, totally. So honestly, dude, fuck you. And you're also very stupid because I powered through a lot of typos and a lot of grammatical errors in that one.
Yeah, you were like in pain reading that. I could tell.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, Jesus. And then our last review here is from Braz, who gives us 1 star. And the head of the review says, kind of very lame, actually, frowny face. And the body of the review says, needs Blu-ray DVD combo. Kind of very lame, actually, frowny face. And you know what? I'll agree with this one. So there is a Blu-ray release, there's a DVD release. The DVD release is $5. The Blu-ray release is $25. It has been $25 for fucking ever. here. And you know what? It's one of those things, right? Where if you're going to charge $25 for a Blu-ray, like 10 years after the movie came out, just put the fucking DVD in there. Come on, man. It's not that big a fucking deal.
Yeah,
especially
exactly,
the DVD was $5.
Exactly.
So kind of minor complaint, but I can understand that complaint there for sure. Oh, and also one more thing before we get to our final thoughts. There was a in memoriam section for Justin Carmichael, also known as Jew Wario, the guy who killed himself because his wife found out he was grooming mentally disabled teenagers. I mean, to be fair, nobody knew that at the time.
No, yeah,
nobody knew that at the time.
It's not his fault. It's not his fault. It's just, so as you were saying this, I was listening, but I was also processing my final thoughts because I wanted to get over how dated this film is and how it kind of exists in this no man's land, and that just put a nice little bow on it for me.
But anyway, so yes, that is our review here. So do we have any final thoughts before we get to our pluggables, Brian?
Yeah, so I don't know how to recommend this movie or very much AVGN content to someone who isn't an elderly millennial, but I want to say this is not the place to start or end with James Rolfe. If you like indie film, he has some really fun stuff to check out. Watch The Deader the Better. Watch the Mr. Bucket episode of Bored James. Watch some of his handmade. I would recommend that or his little Ghostbusters documentary, his Rocky Tour documentary. He's made good films. And, you know,
also season 1 of Monster Madness.
Yeah, early Monster Madness, great. I would recommend all of that to an average viewer before I recommended any AVGN stuff. And then I'd say go to the first 2 seasons of AVGN. That was a really fun show. It's very dated. It's very of its time. Lots of stupid scatological humor. The swear jokes, even at the time, they kind of annoyed me. But it's very likable. It's also, he does some good video game history stuff if you are interested in like early video game history. Some of my favorite videos he's done at AVGN are actually things about consoles rather than games. Did some really good work on that. And he was doing it at a time not a lot of people were doing real analysis of those things. But I liked this movie because of who I am, because of my background. But I'm just gonna say it. If I brought a girl home and she said to put on a movie, this is one of the last movies in the world I'd imagine putting on for her.
No, 100%. And I'll definitely echo pretty much all your opinions. And also as well, I will say to people who may or may not be familiar with James Rolfe and his work, who eventually do get to AVGN or just watch it randomly one day, if you're not even familiar with him, I guess. But if it seems hacked to you, it's because James created this whole genre. It's like Seinfeld.
Yeah.
When people are like, Seinfeld is so fucking hacked. It's like, no, James literally created the entire industry of video game reviews, media reviews, and honestly, media analysis and even like long form fucking like nerd content where they talk about 4 hours about the fucking Spyro soundtrack. That is James. That is James.
And it's Doug Walker too, but James did it better and he did it more. I mean, like, I can't take away from Doug Walker's contributions, but if you watch these 5-hour long form video essays, which Lord knows I fucking listen to nothing but them these days, you're going to watch this and you're going to go, oh, it's a guy yelling about video games and making his jokes. Nobody else, I know it's going to sound crazy to Zoomers. Nobody else was doing that when he came out.
No, straight up, James started doing this before YouTube even existed.
The first 3 episodes were put on a videotape that he gave out to friends.
Yes,
His friend told him to put him on YouTube.
No, straight up. He made the first 2 AVGN episodes a year before the very first YouTube video was uploaded. Seriously, that's how old this content is.
And again, I want to say, like, I mean, some of it is kind of, because James is the big dork. He's not really a nerd so much as he is a dork. If 100%, the distinction means anything to you. There is some fucking epic talk. There is, like, one of the most annoying millennial tendencies, and I think, Taylor, you and I both sidestepped it because we were a different type of annoying millennial, but this has been a cromulent, fuck crustable of a day. My ass
Tom Jorgensen.
Yeah. And there is some of that with AVGN for sure.
You know, it's one of those things where James is honestly one of the only people I will tolerate that kind of talk with. Yeah. I'm just going to be honest with you.
The other thing, because Taylor, you and I are the youngest generation to understand this experience, maybe the last generation to understand this. Back in the day, when you rented video games or you had to convince your parents to buy a video game, you know, there weren't really AAA games. There were like platformers, there were RPGs. We're talking like...
And licensed games too.
Games. Yeah, they cost a lot of money. You had to convince your parents to buy them, and a lot of them sucked. And when they sucked, your parents weren't going to buy you another video game for probably a month or 2. If you were renting that game, you had to pick one. There were no reviews. There was no information about whether it was good. All of the boxes said they were the best game of the year. You picked a game out based on the cover. The cover looked awesome, and sometimes it just sucked. And guess what? That's the only game you had to play all weekend until you had to give it back, and you weren't going to get to rent another game for another week. And that's at the root of like AVGN, is retribution for that. I know it's not a very funny conceit when I put it that way, but like if you are our generation or older, if you are a certain generation of millennial or Gen Xer, you probably have a lot of memories of that and just wanting to scream at this game, you lied to me. James would probably tell you that's what AVGN is about.
No, 100%. And I'll definitely echo that because I grew up literally like 2 blocks away from a video like in game rental store that me and my mom probably went to at least once a week. And it was one of those same things where I would rent a video game, obviously, because my mom wasn't fucking playing, or my brother would rent a video game or whatever. And yeah, we would plop it in the N64 and it would be the fucking worst game of all, or it'd be one of the best games of all time. But it really was like rolling the dice. Like maybe one day you would get Killer Instinct or something like that on fucking N64 and like, oh my God, this rocks. And the next week you get MK64 with the shitty endings, and you're like, oh God, I have to play this fucking game all weekend.
And when you rented a shitty game, you got nothing else to play. That's what you're playing.
And, I would actually go to the video store sometimes and I would see either, G4, XPlay would talk about it or AVGN would talk about it or just whatever, like a game that looked garbage. And I would literally sometimes see people pick it up like, I'm going to rent this. And I say, don't play that. That looks horrible. I saw all the reviews. This looks awful. So I was in that transitionary stage where before I didn't have that, but now I'm having this knowledge and I'm using it to help people. I did that once because somebody was going to rent, and I'm not bullshitting, Big Rigs, which is a fucking video. Someone was going to rent Big Rigs. Don't rent Big Rigs.
One other AVGN tip, if any of you youngsters want to look him up, the reviews are actually better and more entertaining. If they're about history rather than a specific game, in my opinion. But also, when he reviews a game that he does like, which happens if he does a whole series on Castlevania, or like he's done episodes about his Zelda series. When he does them on games he likes, it's actually a lot more engaging, I would say, than, I don't know, the Jekyll and Hyde, which is a funny episode. It's a class. I don't know.
There was a re-review of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde fairly recently.
He's done that before, actually, I think. So this must be his revisited of it. Look, this is set in a moment. The time for this has come and gone. I don't watch a lot of these video game reviews from this era and I don't feel this. I feel pretty young. I'm going to be 33 this year, and I don't feel old. I don't think I look old. I don't think I act old, for better or worse. I don't feel old very often. But if I watch AVGN, or if I watch, even more so, if I watch Retsupre, and someday I'll figure out a way that we can do a Retsupre episode. I just have to think about it. Someday we'll do it.
Absolutely.
But when I watch those, I do think, because it's so set in time, it's so set in my childhood, it could never have existed before or after that time, that I think like, ooh, this is a moment that's gone. This is a moment I was there for, and I was young and fresh-faced, and I thought it was the most bleeding edge thing, and now it's done, and it's never coming back.
And even though we're only about a decade or so younger than James, James is old as shit. For better or worse, he's old as shit. He is a nearly middle-aged man with 2 kids, a wife, and a house.
No, he's middle-aged. He's middle-aged.
Yeah, he's 44, 43 years old. That's middle-aged.
He's solidly middle-aged. And you know what? I'm probably never going to watch his new content regularly and be like, oh, this is great. I will probably, after this review, spend the next week revisiting the old ones and be like, that's fun, and then put them down. But I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy that a cool, nice guy who loves to make films, he didn't get his big break. He didn't get to transition to making types of films he wanted to do. Maybe he shouldn't have made his big film an AVGN film. Maybe he should have expanded in The Deader the Better or something. I don't know. But just one more allusion to those fucking assholes. I cannot begrudge a guy with a wife and kids who is able to make some sort of good living making films, which is his passion. I don't care if he has to hire outside help because he's now in his 40s and he doesn't have the time to write and edit every episode like he used to. I think that's cool. And the fact that he's done all that and remained just seeming to be a nice, straightforward, unassuming guy, I think that's cool as shit. And you know what? If this is the biggest level thing he ever did was this movie, I'm sorry for him. But guess what, James? I wish I could tell you that's still pretty cool. You should still be pretty proud of that.
No, 100%. Yeah, and like people getting mad at him because he was in a fucking shitty band that played 2 shows ever that he barely spent time on. Or also cutting live streams early so he can pick up his kids from school. Yeah. People got mad about that.
The thing with the band, I will say, I love the band for him. I'm going to say that in the condescending way the kids do. I love that for you. It's pretty good. It's fun. If I saw them at a state fair, I'd be like, oh, fuck yeah. The thing that sucks about that, and I'm not saying this is James's fault, is that band's gotten high-profile gigs at like gaming conventions and events, and they're not that good. There's probably another band that does a similar thing that deserves it more, you know?
Yeah, there's some like Nintendo core band that's been fucking rocking since 2005, and they live in a tent.
The amazing Dwayne and Brando. Actually, okay, there is a Nintendo core band I want to tell you about, Taylor, because they kick ass.
Yes!
They're not strictly, hang on, you think I'm joking. They're not strictly Nintendo core, but they're called Arm Cannon. They are a prog band that does like full-on band renditions of video game music and like novelty songs from the 80s. So they do like the classic Mega Man music they do as a medley, but they're a prog band. They're like influenced by King Crimson and Frank Zappa and stuff. They do these really tight, intricate video game music covers, and then they also cover like the Hulk Hogan theme. Sorry, I just needed to.
No, that actually sounds kind of cool. But yeah, so, and I also do want to say, because I remember we talked about this a little bit, there's actually a segment of this movie that I think is actually the single best segment of this movie where AVGN goes to a carnival in a nightmare and he gets chased by zombies. I think that's literally the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, and
I think it's fucking fantastic.
It's the best scene in the movie because James gets to lean in into his like horror bona fides. I'm gonna say that's what he should have done. He should have made his big breakup film not AVGN. Maybe he should have made an AVGN short film as a preamble to the theatrical release, and he should have maybe expanded The Deader the Better. Maybe it wouldn't have made any difference, but I think maybe that would have been a better pivot for him to serious filmmaking.
No, 100%. But yeah, that is a absolutely fucking great segment. Obviously, the movie can't be 2 hours of being chased by zombies. That would get pretty tiring. But just that segment by itself is fucking fantastic. By the way, Brian, if you think that's a great segment and you want to see hours and hours of that, just watch The Walking Dead sometime, because they do that all the time instead of just stupid drama that nobody cares about.
I'd rather fucking die. I'd rather fucking suck my own dick. I'd rather eat the rotten asshole of a roadkill skunk than down it with beer.
I'd rather sniff the desiccated asshole of an ox while fucking drinking down elephant piss than to watch The Walking Dead.
Amen.
Oh, God. Amen. 100%. But yes, so that is our AVGN review. So let's get into our pluggables here. So you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on twitter.com. And as well, please follow us and subscribe to us on both our YouTube and our Spotify, where we upload every episode simultaneously to both platforms. And as well, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father GoFundMe. Our great friends Scott, Strawn, and Robert are creating a fantastic little series. They need a little bit more support, obviously monetarily and morally. So if you're willing to give them support, please do so. And as well as always, if you donate to Lucifer and the Father, just post a comment on our YouTube, fucking send me an email, anything. And if you donated within a reasonable amount, like $25-$30, we will match your donation.
Yes, absolutely. As well, you can follow us at Millennials Are Old Pod on Instagram, as well as the page Millennials Are Old on Facebook. Please keep us in mind. Any cringe millennials, cringe zoomers, cringe boomers, Gen Xers, whatever, any weird shit you see by anyone online that makes you think, oh, this motherfucker is from this time, please send it to me. Probably the Facebook page would be the first place I'd see it. There are so many cringe millennials right now. I can't keep up with all of them, especially with it being an election period. As well, you'll notice that I am experimenting with some SEO tendencies, trying to hop on hashtags to get some of the Facebook normies, mostly boomers, very upset. We'll see what works. But yeah, any suggestions you have for us, any feedback, if you want to say to me, there are two millennials right here on the show every week, send it away. I'm just looking for that sweet, sweet engagement. As well, if anyone has anything you'd like us to cover, anything you think would be pertinent to the show, send it away. And there's no guarantee we'll do it, but you know, I feel like Taylor and I have a very sort of pool of knowledge we pull from, and if anyone has a pool of knowledge outside of that to pull from, we'd be happy to. Basically, just hit us up on social media and send me weird shit you find. Not sexual. Please don't send me weird sex things. I don't want them unless they're really funny or really, really erotic.
100%. Yeah, it has to be like one extreme to the other on the sexual content. I mean, to be fair, you can send me dick pics, butthole pics, titty pics, anything you want to send me. I will look at it at the very least.
See, motherfucker Mike's gonna hear this episode.
Yeah.
Hey guys,
you can send me a pic.
What the fuck is up, you motherfucking retards? Check this out. I forget what he sounds like. Was that all right?
That was okay, but he also does the Inspector Gadget. He just push the button when he sounds like that.
God, this fucking dumb motherfucker.
He is so peak cringe millennial. I love him. I hate him, but I love him.
So I know the Zoomers, if any of our Zoomers watch AVGen, they're going to think, oh, this is the most cringe millennial thing. And it is, but it's like wholesome, as the most cringe millennials would say. That's not a phrase I use, but motherfucker Mike is like his evil twin, like the dark world version of him. And he's the worst fucking person I remember seeing on the internet. Oh my God.
He makes Doug Walker's brother look cool.
Okay, he does make the Walkers look likable. Because when you see motherfucker Mike, you're like, oh, this is a deeply unpleasant nerd. You can tell that he's weird about women. You can tell he's weird about, like, marginalized people in general. He's obsessed with being a nerd. He thinks he's so fucking smart. He thinks he's so fucking funny. He thinks he's so fucking interesting. And he's the most basic bitch in the world.
We do not like motherfucker Mike. And if he finds this video, motherfucker Mike, fuck you. That's all I'm going to say. Fuck you, Mike.
Yeah, fuck you, Mike.
Fuck you and your mother. No, that's...
Motherfucker Mike.
Just like in that Slipknot song, take that motherfucker. No, I'm not going to reference Slipknot anymore. But anyway, so yes, I will always reference Slipknot for sure, but that is our episode here. So, we're going to be nerds. We might play video games before we go to bed, and we're certainly going to go to bed angry, but we are going to try to go to sleep at some point. So I'm going to get my Z's. I'm going to get my Rolling Rock. I'm going to get some Buffalo shit and just put my beer in it, and I'm going to fall asleep doing that.
Very soothing.
It is very soothing. There's nothing I like more than having roadkill dead skunk in my room as I fall asleep. But yes, have a good night, everybody. Sleep tight. Don't let motherfucker Mike bite, okay? I want that to be very clear, because he will bite you if he comes in proximity. All right, have a good night, everybody.